Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
I am larger and better than I thought. I did not think I held so much goodness. These are the words of Walt Whitman. Do you even know how much goodness you hold, that you can hold, that is present within you? I'm going to be sharing tonight about recognizing our basic goodness, the basic truth of ourselves that we can lose sight of. We can lose sight of how much goodness we can hold, can't we? When things get challenging, when things start to fall apart, we forget. In Unity, we have what we call the 5 basic Unity principles. There are many more than 5, but these are the 5 that if anyone asked you what's Unity, you can go to these and talk about that. And the first principle is that God is good and everywhere present. We know this as truth. The second principle is because God is good and that we are made in the image and likeness of God, that the core of each person is goodness. Each person is inherently good, has inherent divinity as a truth of their being. And there's some scriptural basis for this. If we look to the Hebrew scriptures, in Psalms 82 says, I have said you are gods, gods plural, not with an apostrophe, you are gods. You are all sons of the Most High. We know Jesus said in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, is it not written in your law? I said, you are gods. You are gods. So that's the truth of our being, that we are divine, that we are gods. Why do we keep forgetting? Why do we keep forgetting and have to be reminded? So we're on this path of radical acceptance. We're doing this work of Tara Brach. We're deep into it now as we've been going through the chapters every week. And we began the whole journey with this understanding of the acceptance that we are in this trance of unworthiness. We all have this experience of a trance of unworthiness, this living a less than attitude that we may be carrying around. Some call it victim consciousness, getting caught up in resentment, anger, blame, shame, self-judgment, fear, you name it. Forgetting the love that we are, the goodness that we are. We're living in unforgiveness day after day after day. That open, pure, innocent, loving nature that we are can tend to shut down. Our heart can tend to close down, and we close down to our true nature. We forget. We forget when we get caught up in these ways. Anger, resentment, judgment, blame, telling that story again and again of the hurt we went through. Have you taken some time to remember your basic goodness lately? Just to remember. Check in. One way that Tara Brach recommends is to take out a photo of yourself from when you were a child, or even a baby or a young child, and just take a look at the light that you were as a child. Just take that in. Take that in. I did a memorial recently, and the gentleman who I did his memorial for, the photo that his wife chose for the program was a photo of him in his high school graduation. And he was in his 60s when he passed. And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting that she chose that? And I've had it on my desk. I've been looking at it. And I recognize that you can just feel his goodness and his heart and his love in that photo. And I'm like, oh, I see that kind of young openness that she wanted him to be remembered because it captured his light in that way. And we never lose that light. We can forget it, but we never lose it. We can tap back into it and open back up to it. Now consider what brought you joy as a child. One of the things that brought me joy from when I was very little is performing, singing, big surprise, right? In front of people and bringing people joy through something that I did or was a part of. That is something that I've always held on to. And it connects me with my heart. And recently I've just been kind of open to what my heart has been calling me to do. And I used to, before I became a minister years ago, my undergraduate and graduate degrees are in theater. And performing was a big part of my life, was my career. And then I had a call to ministry out of my musical theater, Unity Church, Unity in New York. And I got called to be a minister, and it changed my life in such a beautiful way. I'm so grateful. And so it's been years since I've been in a musical, and this opportunity came up. My husband is a theater director, to be in a musical. It was just the right part and the right time. And so I think it's important that we listen to our hearts and check in with that. What makes our heart leap? And I had a little leap. I said, I want to do that. I want to be a part of that. And so I'm in this musical. I've been rehearsing for a couple weeks. And it's called You're in Town. Yes, you're in town, not P. We're talking about P. If you've ever heard of it. Anybody ever hear of it before? Is it totally new? Okay, it's a musical about this. It's hysterical satire musical. To just tell you a little bit about it. About this town, which it's kind of post-apocalyptic scenario where the water has run so short, the reservoirs are so low, that they have to operate public toilets and people have to pay to use the bathroom. So you can imagine, if everybody is holding it all the time, that these people are in a trance of unworthiness, right? This is a group of people who are definitely in fear and despair. They're definitely in a victim story. They're definitely not forgetting who they are, and they're thinking about how they can get enough money to pay to pee. Yes, it's hysterical. It's been really fun for me to do this. This is not I wanted to share with you a little bit about the story, that there's a character that comes in. So there's these people, right, and they've got to line up and pay to use the bathroom and everything. And this young woman comes in. Her name is Hope. So remember that, Hope. And she comes in and she runs into the young gentleman who's the featured character in the show, and she sees him that he's kind of lost his way, right? And so she invites him to follow his heart. And I want to sing just a little bit of it, and I would have invited the young woman who sings this song to come and sing it tonight, but they have rehearsal, and I'm not allowed to take people out of rehearsal, so we're honoring that. But I did want to share this little piece with you. When darkness surrounds you and you lose your way, you have your own compass that turns night to day. And it's even with you before you depart. Be still, hear it beating, it's leading you, follow your heart. Thank you, David. So there's more to it, but that's how it starts, and it awakens something in him, and he lights up, and all of a sudden he remembers who he is, and he remembers that people can be free. They don't have to be doing this, lining up to go to the bathroom. And he wakes up, he empowers people, and he starts a whole revolution, and it's very fun, madcap, fun story. And I always think in theater, my the minister that I was raised up in Unity, at Unity of New York, he always talked about noticing spirit and how spirit speaks to us in the arts, in music, in theater, and poetry. That spirit is not reserved for the pyramid, the chapel, and the sanctuary. That spirit is speaking to us all throughout different aspects of our lives, and we can really listen. In this show, it just kind of really has spoken to me about hope. Thinking of when hope in you speaks to you. What would hope say to awaken you to remember who you are, to remember to follow your heart? And hope perhaps would say to you that it's time to forgive yourself. It's time to forgive yourself. Going back and doing theater after not doing it for a long time, it's bringing a lot of joy, and it's also brought up some other things, some memories of things that didn't work out, or relationships I thought could have been better, or these kind of things. And so, this is an opportunity now, kind of going back into my past in this way, to forgive that, to let that go. Let it go. What shows up when you go back to do something maybe you love or maybe you don't love, or some relationship, maybe a long-time family relationship or friendship, that old hurts or resentments and things pop up. It's like, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to deal with that. That we want to be free. We want to have an open heart, a forgiving and loving heart. And the reason for this is that when we do that, when we let these things go, then we can return to our awareness of our basic goodness, our inherent divinity, and that can shine more and more. We get stuck in these patterns, these old patterns of thinking. So do you replay a story in your mind of what's wrong with you, what's wrong with other people, holding a judgment, holding a hurt? And do these things cause you to live with a resentful and a tight or a closed-off heart when you go to these places? It's just good to be aware of these kind of stories that creep into our minds and our hearts. How does it tighten us up? How does it close us off? Can we even be willing to forgive? We did that forgiveness practice. This is from Radical Acceptance, the one I led you through in the meditation, to address even just being willing to begin the process of letting go and forgiving. I want to share with you a story of a woman who had a very hard time forgiving herself. In fact, she thought she was unable to be forgiven. And this is a woman who Tara Brach had heard her story, and she shares it in the book. She was in a hospital. She was dying from AIDS, and a young Catholic priest came to visit her. She had spent the last decade of her life addicted to heroin and not really caring where she got her fix, just as long as she got it. And that was her life for at least a decade. The only person who she ever truly loved was her daughter. And yet, even her love for her daughter didn't stop her from destroying her life. And so this young Catholic priest came in one day to visit her. He was making his rounds at the hospital. He came and sat down in the chair next to her hospital bed. And he saw her, and her body was just emaciated, and there was a yellow tinge showing how her liver had been affected. He sat down and asked her how she was doing, and she said, "I'm lost. I have ruined my life and every life around me. There is no hope for me. I'm going to hell." She lost her hope. She was in despair. So the priest sat for a few moments in silence. And then he looked on the dresser and saw a photo of a beautiful young woman, and he asked her, "Who is that?" And the woman said, that she's my daughter, and she started to brighten up a bit. Says, she's the one beautiful thing in my life. And he said to her, and would you help her if she was in trouble or made a mistake? Would you forgive her? Would you still love her? The woman said, of course I would. I would do anything for her. She will always be precious and beautiful to me. Why do you ask such a question? And I love his response. He said, because I want you to know that God has a picture of you on his dresser. Can you imagine the unconditional love and forgiveness that she felt in that moment? To be held in that way, in that regard. He gave this woman back her goodness and her innocence that she thought was forever lost. We can do this for others. When we forgive others, we're not pushing anyone out of our heart anymore. When we hold unforgiveness, we're beginning to, or we are regularly identifying them with their undesirable behavior. We hold the memory of something they've done, and then that is who they are in our mind, rather than seeing them for who they are now, or really who they truly are, can be. Tara Brach says, without denying anything, we can open our heart and mind wide enough to see the deeper truth of who they are beyond that experience that they had, that behavior that we rejected or pushed away. She tells the story of another woman who was forgiving a person who she thought she was never going to be able to give. This is one of the most challenging forgiveness stories that I've heard. And this is a woman who attended one of Tara Brach's retreats, and she told her about a man who she struggled to forgive because he caused her son to be unable to walk for the rest of his life. She had picked up her son, Brian, from a bar mitzvah class that he was in, and they were hit by a drunk driver, and she sustained some minor injuries with the car flipped, and when the car flipped, her son's legs were crushed. This forgiveness was a very long and painful process. It wasn't just a choice to forgive, it was long, years, and thousands of times this woman sat with the burn of the anger and the resentment and the anguish of the loss of her son's body and the dreams that she had held for him for what he could do with his life. The resentment, the guilt. She felt that there was a hardening of her heart when she held this hatred for him, and she wanted that to be let go of. She didn't want it to take her over the way that it always did. She knew that the only way back to love and to freedom was through forgiveness. And so she became willing. She took on the intention, just the intention, to forgive this man. And so over years, gradually, she allowed these feelings to move through her and to forgive them as they arose in her. And as she forgave these feelings again and again, her heart began to widen to where she could include him in her heart. And so we recognize the basic goodness in all beings when we hold all beings with a forgiving heart, with a willingness to see the truth of who they are, the goodness beyond appearances. And so let us learn and practice seeing each other as we are now and not holding a person to who they once were. I want to close with this from T.S. Eliot. What we know of other people is only our memory of the moments during which we knew them. And they have changed since then. We must also remember that at every meeting, we are meeting a stranger. A stranger. Can we hold that openness for each other, that we don't really know who this person is today, and perhaps they've changed, and perhaps there's an opportunity there for connection, for love, for forgiveness, for healing. Namaste.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.